I'm in one of our pantries today, and this is a can rotator system that we put in over 10 years ago in our original pantry and then moved it here when we switched things over to put in our wood stove. We're going to build another one of these today, and I wanted to bring you along for the process. Rotating your canned goods is very important, so we found this can rotator system worked well for us. You take out from the bottom, put in from the top, and even though we do label and date our cans individually, this lets us make sure that we have a simple process for keeping them rotated. Now, we do have our own things that we've canned, like our pizza sauce, pasta sauce, cabbage, vegetables, but this is in addition to what we grow. We do believe that it's good to have canned goods on hand as well as your fresh, your home canned, your freeze dried, and your dehydrated. So today I want to make another one of these. It's going to be a little bit smaller for the space that it's going to go in, but I have some other canned goods that I want to add into our regular rotation. And as you can see, this one is full, so we needed to make more space. On this wall we have two separate units. Each one has 4 areas for putting cans, and you can easily fit 7 or 8 cans of your regular size vegetables or more if they're narrower like soup cans. We used a plastic lattice on the front so we can see through to see how much we have. This also makes it very easy to be able to inventory what you have and what you may need to purchase or stock up on. The cans come out very easy. You just lift it up out of the bottom, it drops whatever is next, and when you buy new you can just put them right in through the opening in the top. So it was made, these were made out of scrap material that we had on hand from other projects we had finished. So we're going to go look in our workshop and see if we have enough scrap materials to make another one. Before heading out to the workshop, we measured out exactly what we were going to need. So my plan is to make a can rotator that is tall enough to match kind of this section. So it'll be able to do 3 cans. So I know I'm looking for some 1x4, I'm looking for some plywood, some 1x2 or boards I can cut down to be a 1x2. I need some plastic lattice and then some screws to put it all together. So let's take a walk and see what we can find. Well, I came out to our workshop and I was able to find all the pieces that I needed, so I didn't have to go out and buy anything. So I found some scrap 1x4, some scrap 1x2, another piece that's going to be the wedges to keep the cans so that they roll out in the bottom, so it's going to get cut on an angle. I have a scrap piece of plywood left over from another project that's going to be the top of the unit. I've got some 1/4" plywood here that's going to be the back, and I have some scrap lattice behind me that is going to be the front pieces in front of the cans. And I also found some screws left over from another project that I'll be able to use to put the lattice on the front. Only thing I still have to get is some of the screws that we're going to use to put the sides top and bottom together, and then the screws to adhere it to the wall. The next step is going to be getting all these measured, marked, and cut. Because I'm using scrap wood, some of it does have splits in it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I measured out, and I have plenty. I'm actually going to go a little further over on this, and I'm just going to cut off where the split is before I measure out my 18 inches on this piece. And I'm going to do similar with the other boards, and I'm going to get these all cut up, and then I'll move on to the next pieces. Now that I have all my 1x4s marked, we're going to get these cut up and get rid of the scraps. Now that I have my sides and my bottom of the can rotator cut, I have 4 that are 1x4s cut at 23 inches. and I have my bottom, which is also a 1x4, cut at 18 inches. So the next piece I'm going to cut is a piece of 1x2, and again, I'm just using a scrap piece. And this is also going to be 18 inches long, because this is going to go against that bottom piece, and it's going to prevent the cans from falling out from the front of the rotator. So I'm going to get this marked and cut so we can move on to the next piece. So the next thing I'm going to do is I have a piece of 1/2-inch plywood. Again, this is just a scrap piece from another project, and I've measured it to 18 inches long. The depth on the top can be adjusted depending how much you want to hang over the top of your can rotator, depending if you're going to use that as a separate shelf. So I measured this out to 18 inches. I set my gate for my table saw at 18 inches, and then I just double checked by putting the board against the gate to make sure that my blade was lined up in the correct spot. So let me get this cut, and then we'll move on to the next piece. So the next piece that we're going to cut is the back. Now this is going to be 18 by 24. This is just some thin plywood left over again from another project. So I already have my gate set at 18, so I'm just going to do the straight cut. It's already at 24 inches wide, which worked out perfect for this project. So let me get this cut, and then we'll be back to cut the last piece we need. So to finish up on the wooden pieces that we're cutting, this is just a 2x2 that we're going to cut into wedges. And those wedges are to go at the bottom shelf of the can rotator to angle. So cut in half, this is going to be at an angle, and when the cans hit it, it kind of pushes them a little bit forward for you to take that bottom can out. So this is going to have to get cut across diagonally from one corner to another, and then they'll be cut into 5-inch lengths that we'll be using in the bottom of the rotator as we get it built. So let me get that done, and I'll be right back. So to go on the front of our can rotator is our lattice. And again, I'm just using some scrap pieces that we had, so I'm gonna have to scrub this up once I get it cut out. I've already marked out my 16 by 18 that I'm gonna be using, and I'm gonna cut this part out with a jigsaw. So let me get that cut out so that we can then take our pieces and look at getting them put together. We have all our pieces together. These are the pieces I was talking about that are going to go on the bottom for the cans. As you can see, it's one piece cut. That gives me what I need for the last of those. We have our lattice cut and ready, and I've got all the screws that we need to put it together. So it's getting late and it's getting chilly, so I'm going to grab all this. We're going to take it in the house, and I may stop where I am for today and pick up on this tomorrow. Well, it was a bit chilly this morning. It was 24 degrees, so we brought everything in the house where it's a little bit warmer to work on. Now things are going to look a little bit rough right now. We've still got a little sanding to do. We've got some holes to patch, and then this is going to get painted. But I wanted to show you, now that the pieces are cut, we're going to dry fit them together to make sure everything fits right before we start screwing things together or drilling any holes. So we have our back, we have our 1x4 that is our bottom, we have our longer 1x4 pieces, which are going to be our sides, and we put those in. Then we have our angled pieces, which go in. I'm going to just put 2 of those to start with. Those are going to help me to know where my internal spacers are going to go. I can put the other one in the middle. Get these fit in. We have our 1x2 piece, which you can see needs the holes filled in, but that's going to go right here on the front to keep the cans at the bottoms from falling out. We have our lattice, which is going to fit here in the middle. And that's going to allow us to put the cans in at the top, and then they'll roll down to come out the bottom. And then last but not least, we have our top piece, which I could have used another piece of 1x4 for the top. It would have made it narrower and it would have hugged the wall a little bit more, but I have space where I'm going to put this, so a little bit wider shelf on the top comes in handy. So now that I know all this is going to fit together perfectly, I'm going to take this back apart, going to do any final sanding I need to do. I'm going to pre-drill my holes where everything drills in so that I don't split out any of the wood, and then we're going to start getting this put together. We've pre-drilled the bottom and the top of the can rotator so that we don't have to worry about splitting the board when we screw in. We used a bit that allows us to be able to countersink our screws, which is going to be especially important on the top because you don't want screws sticking out if you're going to use this as a shelf. We had also marked these so we knew we were going to hit our center dividing boards properly for both the bottom and the top. Now, the next piece that is going to be important to make sure that we are putting it together correctly is the back to our vertical pieces. Now, to make sure that when I'm putting the screws into this, that I'm doing it in the right location, what I've done is flipped the back over. So this is actually the back side that's going to be against the wall. And I lined everything up. I used the dividers, 2 at the bottom and 1 at the top, to make sure these are aligned properly. And I'm just going to trace these out with just a quick pencil line to know that I have these in the right spot. And then these will be ready to go. Now, the reason that we're doing all this with screws instead of brads is that this can rotator is going to be holding 21 cans, and that's a lot of weight. Now, when we put this up, the back of this is what's going to be screwed into the studs on the wall, and we want to make sure that this is going to stay together and hold up well and handle that weight without any problems. Now that everything is lined up, I've got simple 1 1/4 inch wood screws that we're going to put this together with. I've got my pre-drilled holes. I made sure that my vertical pieces are lined up correctly and flush on the inside. And we're just going to set 2 of these up so they'll be ready. That's another nice thing about pre-drilling. You can kind of get yourself set so you don't have to worry about the screws moving. And then in we go. And then I'm going to get the rest of these in and we'll be back for the next piece. With the bottom attached, I've taken out the wedges that we're going to be using at the bottom that are going to allow our cans to come out a little bit easier. And I'm going to put these temporarily in between these vertical pieces at the top. If I don't put these in and these aren't separated correctly, I'm not going to be able to get my cans in, and it's not going to line up on the back correctly for me to get this all screwed together. So I'm just going to put these in at the top. Now, I don't know if I had mentioned these are each 5 inches long, and those are one of the last things that we're going to put in. So I'm going to put these in, and that's going to allow me, and I'm not worried about how this is sitting on the back, so I'm going to give myself a little extra room. And that's going to allow me to bring the top up, make sure things are lined up correctly, and I can pull this in to make sure that the end is attached without pulling it too tight to allow the cans to still come in. So let me get this all screwed together and then we'll get the back on. The hardest part of building this can rotator is now done. So I can pick this up. This is all of our frame and we're ready to put the back on. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to carefully lay this down. I'm going to let it overhang because the top sticks out. And then we have our piece of plywood that we've already marked so we know exactly where to screw through to put this together. So that's going to be the next step. I'm going to get this screwed in, and then we'll be ready to put the front piece on the bottom, and then it'll be time to do a sanding and to get it all painted. All right, so now we're screwing the back on. I did pre-drill it to make sure that I'm not going to split anything out. And I'm putting 18 of these 1 1/4 inch screws in on the back. Now, some people may say that that's overkill, but the reason that I'm doing this is going to be holding up over 20 pounds of weight in the can contents alone, and then the weight of the unit itself. So we want to make sure this is adhered very well to the can rotator frame itself. Now, I may have mentioned before, this is going to be screwed into studs. Because of the weight that this is going to be holding, this isn't something that you want to use some simple anchors and screw it through some drywall. So if you're going to make one of these yourselves, make sure that you have a good stud support to go behind this. So let me finish getting these screwed in, and then we'll be back for the next step. So before we put the stop for the cans on the bottom, which is our 1x2 piece, I'm going to put in the wedges that we have that are going to go here in the back. And that's what, as the cans fall, are going to push that bottom can forward so that we can take it out. Now, because of the shape and the size and where these are being put in, they really don't have anything good to hold them in as far as screwing them in. And we've found that gluing them in works great. We've never had any problems. So I'm just going to put wood glue on these and spread this out a little bit. Make sure that we've got enough so it adheres well. And then I'm just going to take this, going to drop it in, flip it over, and then we're going to press these into place. And any extra glue I can just wipe up. So I'm going to do that with all 3 of these. Then once I have that done, we'll get this screwed in. And while that glue is drying will be a great time for us to be able to fill any extra holes and do anything else we need to do before we move on to the next step. Now that we've got everything in, the glue is dried, our sanding is done, the next step for us is going to be to give this a nice, fresh, clean coat of paint. Now, if you had gone to the store and were using all fresh wood, maybe you'd want to stain it or urethane it. But for us, because all we're using are scraps from old projects, a nice clean coat of paint is going to be the thing that we're going to do. Now, we're going to be putting, as soon as we're done with that, we'll be getting to putting our lattice on, and then that'll finish the project up. But let me get this painted, and then I'll be back so we can get the lattice. Now that our can rotator is all painted, I've put just a couple screws into the lattice to show you how we determine exactly where this needs to sit on the front of the box. So I have a can, that's what we're going to be using, and in placing this, you want to make sure that you can still easily fit a can in the top and that you can get the can out of the bottom without any problems. You don't want your lattice put into a position that you're not going to be able to get the can out afterwards. So now that we have that set, I need to take this lattice off the front of the rotator so that I can use these 3-inch screws to get this screwed into the studs in the wall. So that's our next step, so let's go get that done. So we're in our pantry. This is a space that we have redone. It's sheetrocked, but it isn't trimmed out or painted yet. So this is a great space for me to share this little tip with you. Now, if you're hanging cabinets or something on the wall like this can rotator that is kind of heavy, and you want to make sure you have it level or that it can be held up in place, especially if you're working by yourself, a great thing to do is to mark where the bottom of your cabinet or shelf is going to be. Put a board, in this case I'm using a scrap piece of 2x4. I've screwed that into the wall. I'm not worried about the holes that it's going to make. Of course, you may not want to do this on your living room wall, but it gives you a surface that you already know is level, because I leveled this out already, and it also gives me a place where I can now pick this up, balance it right on top of that, and I can use just one hand to hold it and one hand to get it screwed into the wall. So let me grab the drill and we'll get that done. So I did pre-drill the holes for these screws as well, and I just wanted to note that the screws that are on this side, and again I'm using two 3-inch screws right into a stud in the wall. I have these angled so that they go directly into that stud, and the ones over here are only slightly angled, they're more straight. So let me get this all screwed up onto the wall and we'll be ready to put the lattice back. Well, I took my support down, this is screwed into the wall, and it is not going anywhere. Now, if you were concerned, you could paint over the top of these screws. I'm not too worried about it. Like I said, this is in my pantry. This is also something that I may want to move later, so not painting over those is going to make it a lot easier for me to move it. For support on the bottom, if you were concerned about holding this up because of the weight on it, an extra support doesn't hurt. Or you could put a fancier piece of wood or molding down on the bottom that you could leave for later. So now that this is up, let's go get that lattice and get it on the front to get this project finished. So now that the lattice is all screwed on, we're ready to put in the cans. For me, I always start by putting the first can on the bottom, and then I put the other cans on the top. Now for some people, they're going to question, if you just drop this in and it hits the other can, is it going to dent it? If you're concerned about that, you can. The nice thing with the lattice is you can put a finger in and you can gently lower it down if you're really concerned that the cans are going to hit too hard. But once you've got a couple cans in there, no worries. It's going in, they fill fine. And then once this is full, I'll put in some here and here. Now another nice thing about using the lattice is you can see how many you're down. So when you're making your grocery list or looking at what you need to restock, it's easy to know where you're short or what you're full up on. So let me get the rest of these cans in, and then we'll look at it when it's all full. Now that we have this loaded, this for us is just one more way to organize the storage in our pantry. Now, I don't use this in my long-term pantry. This is our working pantry, but it does allow me to quickly see where I'm at with my par level. We have found that going 7 cans high works well for us. It's not too much weight. If you saw the unit that I showed at the beginning of this video, that's actually 4 separate units. They are 4 wide instead of 3. So this is something you could make wider, you could make narrower, you could just have it as 2 or as 1, depending on what your space allows. But for us, this is a great way to rotate through the food in our pantry and to keep it organized and easily viewable. Now, if you like this project or other projects like this, make sure you leave a comment if there's something special you'd like to see us do. Give us a thumbs up and share our video because it really does help us out a lot. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, everybody, see you soon.